Hello and welcome to Star Diary, the podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. You can subscribe to the digital edition of the magazine by visiting iTunes, Google Play or Apple News, or to the print edition by visiting skyatnightmagazine.com.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to Star Diary, a weekly guide to the best things to see in the Northern Hemisphere's night sky. As we're based here in the UK, all times are in GMT. In this episode, we'll be covering the coming week from the 9th to the 15th of December. I'm Ezzy Pearson, the magazine's features editor, and I'm joined on the podcast today by Mary McIntyre. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Ezzy.
So, what do we have coming for us in this week?
We have 5 planets visible at the same time in the evening sky, several shadow transits on some of those gas giants. Then we've got quite a few clair-obscur effects, and Friday the 13th is unlucky for the Geminids peak, but not for one minor planet who's going to visit a cat.
Okay. I always love how you manage to find ways to make these events sound so fascinating. Please do tell us what's going on.
Oh, the planets are just spectacular all of this month. We start the evening with Venus that has moved into Capricornus this week. It's going to be blazing in the southwest after sunset at mag minus 4.3. That is setting at about 7:15 p.m. Meanwhile, Saturn is in Aquarius and is located about 29 degrees above the southern horizon as soon as it gets dark, and Saturn will set at about 11 p.m. At mag +1, that is 100 times fainter than Venus, but both are still very easy to spot when you're looking for those. Neptune and Uranus are also visible, but they are much fainter and optical aids will be needed. So if you want to find Neptune, it's about 14 degrees to the left of Saturn, located between Aquarius and Pisces, and that will set at about 20 past midnight. That is mag +7.8, so you'll definitely need a telescope or big binoculars for that. Uranus is on the boundary between Aries and Taurus and is about 7 degrees to the right of the Pleiades cluster, and that remains visible till 20 to 6 in the morning. And that is mag +5.7, so that's a little easier to spot than Neptune. Jupiter this week lies in Taurus. That is shining out at mag minus 2.8, so that is unmissable in the eastern sky after dark. It reached opposition on the 7th of December, but it's still going to be visible all night long from dusk till dawn all month. There are a few special events happening. On Monday, the 9th of December at 4:35 p.m. until 7 p.m, Europa and its shadow are going to transit Jupiter, and the shadow is going to lie really close to the Great Red Spot. So it's always amazing when the shadow transits coincide with a Great Red Spot being nearby. They just look so cool, being able to see both. Tuesday the 10th, there's another transit, this time by Io, and again the shadow is going to be close to the Great Red Spot that night as well. So if we have clouds on Monday, you've got another chance to see a shadow transit in the Great Red Spot on Tuesday. On the 11th of December, Jupiter is going to occult a star. So you may remember last week that Mars did this. This week, Jupiter is going to occult a star. This time it's mag +10.8 star, so it is quite a faint one. But it's going to take about 2 hours, and Jupiter will pass in front of the star and obliterate it. And then a couple of hours later, the star will pop back out again. That is definitely going to be something that's a challenge and will need a larger telescope. But it's always fun to just observe the planetary motion mechanics in action, as it were, because they're moving at a totally different speed from the stars.
And hopefully some of our listeners will have gotten to grips with something like that last week where Mars occulted a star. So getting some practice in on that beforehand.
Yeah, they are challenging, but boy, it's so rewarding when you pull it off. Finally, for Jupiter, on Saturday, the 14th of December, it's going to lie just 4.6 degrees below an almost full moon. Moving on to Mars, that is rising about 7:20 p.m. and will then be visible all night long. It's brighter than last week. It's now around mag minus 0.7, but it's going to continue to get brighter as the month goes on. And by Saturday the 14th, Mercury will just be starting to sneak into the eastern sky before sunrise. It will be a challenge. It'll be very low down in the southeast, but at mag +0.6, you should be able to spot it. But do please, before dawn, be very, very careful that you're not pointing binoculars somewhere where the sun is going to rise. So do be very, very careful with that. But Mercury is going to get a little bit higher in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we really can't stress that enough. Like,
No.
set a reminder on your phone, look exactly up in your exact location, what time the sun's coming up, and give yourself a fairly hefty window, because you can cause yourself a lot of damage if you accidentally catch the sun through your binoculars or any kind of optical device. You shouldn't even look at it with naked eyes, let alone through something like that.
Yeah, it makes me wince just thinking about it, quite honestly. Finally, on the planets, the minor planet 15 Eunomia reaches opposition on Friday, the 13th of December. So, as with all planets, when it's opposition month, it's well placed all month. But on that particular night, it's going to lie in Auriga, and the path this month passes through the Cheshire Cat asterism, which lies very close to the open cluster M38. So this minor planet, you'll see it passing the grinning Cheshire Cat shape that the stars make out within that little area of sky. I love Auriga. It's full of the leaping minnow and splash, and it's got all of the open clusters and the Cheshire Cat. It's just an awesome patch of sky. That planet is Mag plus 8.1, so you will need binoculars or a telescope to spot it, but the Cheshire Cat asterism will help you find that.
Auriga, is that the charioteer?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one it stands for. I'm much better with like what they actually are than their Latin names.
Yeah, and actually almost none of them actually look like what they're named for to my eyes, but...
Oh yeah, a couple of weeks ago I was talking with Katrin and it was like, Gemini. Yeah, no, Gemini, that looks like two stick figures of people. Every other constellation, I don't see how that's a giraffe or a unicorn, but if someone says so.
It's a great activity if any of you do outreach, though. Go to a class of children, give them a star pattern, tell them to make up their own character. It's so much fun seeing what they come up with.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, I love doing that. You get a lot of Elsas from Frozen.
I can imagine that.
Moving on to the moon, this week we're moving from a first quarter to full moon, probably my favourite phase of the moon. There's always so much to see in the full week between those two phases. Monday the 9th, as the moon rises, you will see the eyes of Clavius, clair-obscur effect, where the two little craters within Clavius catch the light first. So you see the outline of the crater and two little round white eyes staring out at you. That will be a challenge because it's on a rising moon, but definitely worth looking for. And if you don't quite catch the eyes of Clavius, you'll see the sun rising over Copernicus crater, one of the biggest craters on the lunar near side, and that is always fun to observe. On Tuesday the 10th, the jeweled handle clair-obscur effect is visible as the sun rises over the Montes Jura mountain range and the area around Sinus Iridum. Always absolutely beautiful to observe that when the sun's rising. Then the following day, you can look for Cassini's moon maiden, Promontorium Heraclides, as when you look at it in a refractor upside down. Cassini named that after his wife Genevieve because it resembles like a cameo side profile of a lady with long flowing hair. It was amazing how many times I'd photographed that and didn't realise I had. Once you know to look for it, it just leaps out at you. On Friday the 13th, the 96% waxing moon is going to pass through the southern part of the Pleiades. We seem to have had a lot of the moon visiting the Pleiades events in recent months, but it's not going to pass over the main cluster of the Pleiades, but the southern part of it, the moon is going to be located there on Friday. So on Sunday the 15th at 9:01 a.m, we have a full moon, which I believe is the cold moon in the Native American almanac calendars. But yeah, that will be a full moon. It's not a super moon this time, I'm afraid, but it will still be very beautiful to watch the full moon rising.
Last month, we had a bit of a conversation about why the November moon was called the beaver moon. I don't think we really need to have a conversation about why the cold moon in December is called the cold moon.
No, the January one was the snowblind moon because it was a kind of demonstration of why it was dangerous to go hunting at night when you were blinded by the sun reflecting off the snow. I really like that one. The cold moon is just stay home under a blanket.
I do think though, like when it's really, really cold, you know, it's that like it's so cold that the sky goes really clear, then the way that the atmosphere is and the sort of like consistency of the seeing, for want of a better term, it does make the moon look even colder. It has that sort of like slightly effect to it. So I think the moon does quite often look colder in December to me. And I don't think that's just, it's It's probably just psychosomatic.
It could be. And you do get much clearer nights when it's cold. And it's why I love, although I wear about 15 layers of clothes, I just love being out observing at this time of year because the sky is just pristine a lot of the time. We have the Geminids meteor shower peaking this week. This is caused by debris from the active Apollo asteroid 3200 Phaethon. The debris from this active asteroid is traveling at about 35 kilometers per second. The meteors within every different meteor shower have a slightly different speed. They've got a different parent body. This is actually active from the 4th to the 20th of December, but the peak is overnight on Friday the 13th and Saturday the 14th of December. Unfortunately, we're going to have a massive full moon in the sky, which, as beautiful as it is not great for meteor showers. Always, the press like to quote the zenith hourly rate of a meteor shower, and for the Geminids, that is 150 meteors per hour at the peak. Even without a moon, that is not how many meteors you would see. So basically, the zenith hourly rate is a kind of figure that relies on, it's a theoretical figure based on whether the radiant is directly overhead, you can see the whole sky, there's no light pollution, etc., etc. You will never see 150 meteors per hour with the Geminids. And with a full moon, you're really going to struggle. But there's a really good article in the Sky Diary about how to photograph a meteor shower under a full moon. Some of my best meteor photographs have been taken under a full moon. So all is not lost. The camera may pick something up that your eyes don't see. So yeah, definitely worth looking out for that. The radiant drifts through the upper part of Gemini throughout the shower activity period. And that radiant is very high after midnight, so that does increase how many meteors we see. Don't look directly at the radiant, though, because the tracks of the meteors coming from the radiant are usually a bit shorter and they don't look quite spectacular. Just look about 45 degrees away and you'll get a better result that way. Wherever the moon isn't is a good place to look this time.
That's always good advice. Like, wherever the big bright light is, don't look there. But that's the point, because the radiant is where all the meteors seem to come from. So if you're looking directly at the radiant, then you're looking at the meteors that are coming straight at you. Whereas if you're looking slightly to the side, it's the ones that are shooting past at an angle, which means you see a lot more of the train, you see a lot more of the trail. I think it is also worth bearing in mind that even though you're not going to see 150 meteors of an hour, this is one of the more prolific meteor showers of the year. So it's definitely worth getting out there and trying to see some, even if the moon's not being terribly cooperative.
Yeah, and the radiant thing is they're not actually coming out from a center point. It's just purely a line of sight effect. And remember as well that you get more meteors in the dawn sky because the dawn side of Earth is facing the debris stream. So it's like running in the rain. The front of you gets wetter. It's a similar thing. So after midnight, you'll definitely get more than, unfortunately, going out at midnight in December is very cold, but it's also worth it because you will see more meteors then.
It's more like the radiant is more sort of the kind of point on Earth that's plowing through the debris stream. It's sort of that kind of thing, as opposed to like, oh, they're all coming from this one specific place.
Sort of linked to that, we still have Comet C2023A3 moving through Aquila this week. It's passing through part of the Milky Way and it sets at about 8:30. So this week, moonlight is going to really interfere with that because it's predicted to fade from around mag +9 to +10.5. So that is a very challenging comet, especially visually. But if you can get it in amongst the Milky Way, it would make for a very beautiful photograph. So although not as beautiful as it has been in recent weeks, it's still worth looking out for that. And finally, the 9th of December, Monday the 9th, is the 14th anniversary of the passing of Sir Patrick Moore. He needs no introduction to our listeners, I'm certain. He actually held the Guinness World Record for the longest serving TV presenter because he hosted the Sky at Night TV show from 1957 through to 2012. He had a really big interest in the moon, wrote books on the moon and was a specialist in lunar libration. But he also compiled the Caldwell catalogue, which was meant to go hand in hand with the Messier catalogue. So it's a catalogue of 109 star clusters, nebulae and galaxies that are easily observable by amateur astronomers. So as this year is the 14th anniversary, I thought it might be really nice if it's clear on Monday the 9th, if all of us go out and observe Caldwell 14, which is the double cluster in Perseus, and that is genuinely one of my favourite things to look at in binoculars. So if we could all do that on Monday 9th, I think Patrick would have loved that. So Patrick was great with outreach, great communicator, and I think it'd be great for us all to go out and do some drawings of the double cluster that night.
I think that's a lovely idea. And if anybody does do that, please do email in at contact@sky@nightmagazine.com to let us see your sketches or your photographs, whether that's of what you took or just of you out together with your fellow astronomers. And just let us know that you were out there and thinking of Patrick, because obviously he's always been a big presence on this magazine, even though he was no longer with us by the time that I joined. So yes, we're all very fond of him.
Okay, that's everything for this week.
Thank you very much for taking us through all of that, Mary. And if our listeners would like to have even more stargazing highlights, please do subscribe to the podcast and we'll be back here next week with even more. But to summarise this week again, 6 planets are going to be visible in the evening sky this week, with Venus and Jupiter very bright. On Monday, the 9th of December, the eyes of Clavius are going to be visible on the moon, Europa's shadow will be near Jupiter's great red spot, and it also might be a good time to observe C14, the double cluster for Sir Patrick Moore. On Tuesday, the 10th, the jeweled handle will be visible on the moon, while Io makes a shadow transit with its shadow near the great red spot. On Wednesday, the 11th, the moon maiden will be visible, whilst Jupiter occults a star. On Thursday the 12th, look to Comet A3 with a telescope as it's moving through the constellation of Aquila. On Friday the 13th, the minor planet Eunomia reaches opposition, the Geminids meteor shower reaches its peak, and the moon passes through the Pleiades. On Saturday the 14th, the Geminids will continue to be at the peak of their activity, whilst Jupiter lies below a nearly full moon. On Sunday the 15th, we'll also see the full moon occurring at around 9:01 a.m., whilst Mercury returns to our dawn skies. So lots of things to be getting on with, and we hope you all have some good sessions out there and you get some nice clear skies. From all of us here at Sky Night Magazine, goodbye. If you want to find out even more spectacular sights that will be gracing the night sky this month, be sure to pick up a copy of BBC Sky at Night magazine, where we have a 16-page pull-out sky guide with a full overview of everything worth looking up for throughout the whole month. Whether you like to look at the moon, the planets, or the deep sky, whether you use binoculars, telescopes, or neither, our Sky Guide has got you covered, with detailed star charts to help you track your way across the night sky. From all of us here at BBC Sky at Night magazine, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Star Diary podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. For more of our podcasts, visit our website at skyatnightmagazine.com/podcasts or head to Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite podcast player.